You're not worthy of our son. She's a billionaire. 2. You know, when people ask me to tell this story, I always start with a deep breath because even now, years later, my heart still races thinking about everything that happened. My name is Carolina, and I'm about to share with you the most painful, humiliating, yet ultimately triumphant day of my entire life. This is the story of how I went from being treated like trash at my own wedding to showing a room full of billionaires exactly who they were messing with. But to understand how explosive that wedding day was, you need to know how it all began. You see, Pablo and I met in high school. Oh, Lord, that boy was something else. Tall, handsome, with this smile that could light up any room he walked into. We were both 17 when we first locked eyes across that crowded cafeteria in Memphis, Tennessee. I was sitting with my usual group of friends, laughing about something silly, when this fine young man walked over and asked if he could sit with us. Before I begin sharing my story with y'all, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now telling me what country you're watching from. I love seeing where my beautiful audience is tuning in from all around the world. Please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support means everything to me. Now, I grew up in North Memphis, and let me tell you, we didn't have much. My daddy passed away when I was just 12 years old, leaving my mama to raise me and my 2 younger brothers all by herself. Mama worked as a substitute teacher. And between you and me, some months we had to choose between keeping the lights on or putting food on the table. But Mama, she was strong. She taught me that being poor doesn't mean being worthless, and that hard work and determination could take you anywhere you wanted to go. Pablo, on the other hand, never talked much about his family. Whenever I'd ask about meeting his parents or where he lived, he'd get this strange look in his eyes and change the subject. "Baby, you'll meet them when the time is right," he'd always say. And foolish me, I trusted him completely. I thought maybe his family was just private people, or maybe they were going through some tough times like we were. What I didn't know, what he never told me, was that Pablo came from money. Not just regular money, honey. I'm talking about serious generational wealth. His father owned multiple businesses across the South, had connections with politicians and celebrities, and moved in circles where $1 million was just pocket change. But Pablo kept all of this hidden from me for reasons I wouldn't understand until much, much later, during our senior year of high school. While other kids were worried about prom dates and graduation parties, I was already thinking like an entrepreneur. You see, I noticed how many students in our school were always hungry between classes, but the vending machines were either broken or overpriced. So I started small. I'd buy bulk snacks and drinks from the wholesale store and sell them to my classmates at reasonable prices. At first, it was just me with a backpack full of chips and sodas, making maybe $20 or $30 a week. But word spread fast. Students started seeking me out, asking if I had this snack or that drink. Pretty soon, I was making more money in a week than my mama made in a month at her substitute teaching job. That's when Pablo really started paying attention to me. Not because of the money. He didn't need money, but because he saw something in me that I didn't fully recognize yet. He saw ambition. Hess saw someone who wasn't content to just accept whatever life handed her. "Carolina," he said to me one evening, as we sat on my front porch sharing a bag of chips I'd brought home from my snack business. "You're different from other girls. You don't just complain about problems, you solve them." I remember blushing so hard that night. This beautiful boy, who could have had any girl in school, was praising me for my little snack hustle. It made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I was worth something more than where I came from. As months passed, my business grew. It started noticing another problem around campus. Students living in dorms who were too busy studying, too lazy, or sometimes too sick to clean their rooms properly. The dormitories were always posting notices about room inspections and cleanliness standards. But these kids had no idea how to maintain their spaces. That's when my second business idea hit me like lightning. Pablo Isaid excitedly one day after school. What if I started a room cleaning service for students? I know how to clean. Mama taught me well, and I could hire other students who need work to help me. Pablo looked at me with this mixture of admiration and something else I couldn't quite place at the time. Now I know it was guilt. He was watching me scrape and hustle for every dollar while his family had more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes, and he couldn't tell me the truth. That sounds amazing, baby. You should definitely do it. So he did. I started with just myself, going from room to room with basic cleaning supplies, charging $15 per room. The work was hard. Scrubbing bathrooms, washing dishes that had been sitting 4 weeks, organizing closets that looked like hurricanes had hit them. But every dollar I earned felt like victory. Within 2 months, I had more requests than I could handle alone. That's when I started recruiting other students who needed work. I found kids like me, ones from struggling families who understood the value of every dollar earned. I trained them, gave them supplies, and soon I had a team of 15 students working under me. The beautiful thing about it was watching these young people transform. Tasha, a girl from the projects who was about to drop out because she couldn't afford books, started making enough money to stay in school. Michael, whose single mother was working 3 jobs to keep him in college, was able to take some pressure off her by paying for his own meals and school supplies. Pablo watched all of this happening, and I could see he was proud of me. But there was something else in his expression that I didn't understand then. It was sadness. He was sad because he knew his family would never accept someone like me, someone who worked with her hands, someone who came from nothing, someone who didn't have a pedigree or a trust fund. By our senior year of high school, my 2 businesses were bringing in more money than I'd ever imagined possible. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I was able to move my family to a better neighborhood, help my mama pay off some debts, and even start saving money for college. Pablo and I both got accepted to the University of Memphis. And I thought this was the beginning of our real future together. I imagined that once we were in college, away from the constraints of high school, he would finally feel comfortable introducing me to his family. But college brought its own set of challenges and revelations. Pablo enrolled in pre-med, and from day one, I could tell his heart wasn't in it. He'd come back from classes looking miserable, complaining about professors and coursework in ways that didn't sound like someone pursuing their passion. Baby, why are you studying medicine if it makes you this unhappy? I asked him one evening as we sat in my dorm room. He was supposed to be studying organic chemistry, but instead he was staring out the window with this lost expression. Because it's what my family expects, he said quietly. But what do you want to do? That's when he told me about his real dream. Pablo wanted to be a mechanic. Not just any mechanic, honey. I'm talking about someone who specializes in restoring classic cars. He'd been fascinated by engines and automotive design since he was a little boy, but his father considered such work beneath their family status. His father says doctors are respectable. Mechanics are just... He paused, looking ashamed. He says mechanics are just servants who work with their hands. Now you have to understand this statement hit me wrong on so many levels. Here I am building successful businesses with my own hands, and this man's father thought manual work was shameful. I was working my way through college cleaning other people's messes, and Pablo's family would probably look down on me for that. But he loved Pablo, and I can see how torn up he was about this situation. So I made a decision that would change both of our lives forever. Then change your major. It told him. Carolina, I can't. My parents are paying for school, and if I switch majors without their permission, they'll what? Cut me off? I stood up and started pacing around my tiny dorm room. Pablo, baby, look at me. Look at what I've built with nothing but determination and hard work. If your parents can't support your dreams, then we'll make those dreams happen ourselves. The conversation that followed lasted all night. Pablo told me about the financial pressure he felt from his family, how they controlled every aspect of his life through money. I told him about my vision for expanding my businesses, how I was planning to use social media and websites to reach customers beyond just our college campus. By morning, we had made a pact. Pablo would secretly change his major to automotive technology while maintaining the appearance of pre-med studies. The automotive program was shorter than medical school, which would give him a head start on building his career, and I would help fund his transition to independence. Now, let me pause here to tell you something important. I wasn't trying to be Pablo's savior or his sugar mama. I was investing in our future together. I believed that if we both followed our passions and worked hard, we could build something beautiful together. I had no idea that while I was planning our future, Pablo was hiding the truth about his family's wealth and their expectations for his marriage. Over the next 2 years, everything I'd envisioned started coming to life. My cleaning service expanded beyond our campus to serve 3 universities in the Memphis area. I hired a coordinator for each campus and trained regional supervisors. The business was practically running itself, which gave me time to focus on my other ventures. The snack business evolved, too. Instead of just selling to students, I started supplying office buildings and small businesses around the city. I learned about bulk purchasing, inventory management, and customer service on a level that most business school graduates never experience. But the biggest transformation was happening online. I had taught myself basic web design and social media marketing, creating websites and social profiles for both businesses. Orders started coming in from people who had never met me, but had heard about my services through word of mouth and social media recommendations. By the time Pablo finished his automotive technology degree, I was pulling in over $50,000 a month between both businesses. $50,000, honey. A girl who used to count pennies for lunch money was now making more than most people's yearly salaries every single month. Pablo, meanwhile, had used the extra years to gain practical experience. While his parents thought he was still struggling through pre-man requirements, he was actually working at high-end auto restoration shops, learning from master mechanics, and building a reputation in Memphis's classic car community. The transformation in him was incredible. The sad, lost boy who had been miserable in chemistry classes was now confident, skilled, and passionate about his work. He could take apart an entire engine and rebuild it better than it had ever been. He understood not just the mechanical aspects, but also the artistry of automotive restoration. When Pablo finally graduated from his automotive program, he was ready to start his own business. But starting a high-end restoration shop required serious capital, more money than either of us had, even with my business success. "I can't ask my father for this kind of money without explaining what it's for," Pablo said as we sat in my apartment looking over business plans and cost estimates. "And if I tell him I want to open a garage instead of going to medical school, then don't ask him," I said simply. Pablo stared at me. "Carolina, we're talking about almost $200,000 just to get started properly. Equipment, tools, a decent location, initial inventory. I know exactly what we're talking about, and I'm telling you, we can do this ourselves." That conversation happened on a Tuesday evening in March. By Friday afternoon, I had liquidated some investments, secured a business loan using my existing companies as collateral, and transferred $180,000 into Pablo's business account. Honey, I wish you could have seen his face. Desmond literally started crying right there in the bank. Not sad tears, but tears of relief and gratitude and love. He grabbed my hands and said, "Carolina, how am I ever going to repay you for this?" I told him, "By building the most successful restoration shop in Tennessee and by loving me the way I love you. What I didn't say was that he was also hoping this would finally be the push he needed to stand up to his family and introduce me as the woman he planned to marry. I figured once they saw how successful he had become, once they realized he didn't need their money or their control, he would feel confident enough to bring me into their lives. I was so naive. Pablo's restoration shop, which he named Classic Dreams Automotive, opened 6 months later in a beautiful converted warehouse in Midtown Memphis. The space was magnificent. High ceilings, state-of-the-art equipment, room for a dozen cars to be worked on simultaneously. Within the first year, Pablo had restored vehicles for celebrities, politicians, and collectors from all over the South. His reputation grew so quickly that people were booking appointments 8 months in advance. The business was generating over $1 million a year in revenue, and Pablo was finally truly happy. As for me, my businesses had grown beyond anything I'd ever imagined. I now had cleaning services operating in 4 states, managed through a network of regional coordinators and local supervisors. The knack distribution business had evolved into a full-scale food service company supplying vending machines, corporate cafeterias, and special events across the Mid-South. By the time Pablo and I had both been out of college for 2 years, I was worth over $10 million, $10 million, baby. A girl who used to count pennies for lunch money was now making more than most people's yearly salaries every single month. As for Pablo, I had helped the man I love pursue his dreams, and in doing so, we'd both become more successful than either of us had dared to imagine when we were 17 years old, sharing chips on my front porch. I thought it was time. Time for Pablo to finally introduce me to his family. Time for us to start planning our wedding. Time for us to stop hiding our relationship and start building our public life together. Pablo, I said to him one evening as we sat in his beautifully decorated office at the shop. "Baby, when are you going to take me home to meet your parents?" I'll never forget the look that crossed his face. It was fear. Pure absolute fear. Soon, Carolina, soon. But Pablo, we've been together for almost 6 years. You've met my family. You've been to Sunday dinners at Mama's house. You know my brothers, my cousins, my aunts and uncles. But I've never met a single person from your family. Sometimes I wonder if you're ashamed of me." "Ashamed of you?" Pablo stood up so quickly he knocked over his coffee cup. "Baby, you are the most incredible woman I've ever known. You're brilliant. You're successful. You're beautiful. You're kind. How could I ever be ashamed of you? Then what is it? What are you hiding from me?" That's when Pablo finally told me the truth. Not the whole truth, but enough truth to explain why he'd been so secretive. "My family has expectations," he said carefully. "They're very traditional, very old-fashioned about certain things, and they've always assumed that I would marry someone from our social circle." "What kind of social circle?" I asked, though I was starting to get a sinking feeling in my stomach. "Carolina, my family has money, a lot of money. And they expect me to marry someone from a similar background." He felt like someone had punched me in the chest. "How much money, Pablo?" "Enough that they think anyone who doesn't come from the same background is what? A gold digger." Pablo couldn't look at me, yes. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, I found my voice. "Pablo, I have my own money. More money than most people see in a lifetime. I don't need anything from your family. I know that, but they don't know that." "Then tell them it's not that simple, Carolina. They've already picked someone out for me." My world stopped spinning. "What do you mean, picked someone out?" Pablo finally looked at me, and I could see tears in his eyes. "There's a family friend, the daughter of one of my father's business partners. They've been planning our marriage since we were teenagers." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "Are you telling me that for 6 years you've been with me while your family planned your marriage to someone else?" Carolina, please let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you let me fund your business while you were engaged to another woman. I'm not engaged to her. I've never even dated her. I've been with you, only you, for 6 years. But your family thinks you're going to marry her. Yes, and you've never told them about me. No, and you've never told them that you don't want to marry their choice. Pablo couldn't answer that one. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Memphis looked so beautiful at night, all lit up and full of possibilities, but right now, all I could think about was how my entire relationship had been built on a lie. Pablo, I said without turning around, do you love me with all my heart? Do you want to marry me more than anything in the world? Then take me to meet your family this weekend. There was a long pause before. He answered, okay. That one word would change everything. The drive to Pablo's family estate took us an hour outside of Memphis into the rolling hills of rural Tennessee, where massive properties stretched for miles, and the houses were so far from the road you needed binoculars to see them clearly. As we turned onto the long, winding driveway leading to his family's home, I felt my mouth drop open. This wasn't just a house. It was practically a mansion. 3 stories of brick and stone with white columns across the front and perfectly manicured gardens surrounding the entire property. Pablo, exactly how wealthy is your family? Had kept his eyes on the road. Wealthy enough. That's not an answer. Carolina, my father's net worth is somewhere around $800 million. $800 million. I had to repeat it in my head several times before it sunk in. Pablo came from a family with nearly $1 billion, and he had let me struggle to pay for his business startup when they could have funded it with pocket change. But more than that, I started to understand the real scope of what we were walking into. This wasn't just about meeting the parents. This was about a poor girl from North Memphis walking into a world where $800 million was just one family's fortune. Pablo, why didn't you tell me? Because I knew it would change things between us. Change things? How? You would have either been intimidated, or you would have thought I was using you for some kind of experiment. Rich boy playing with a poor girl. I wanted to argue with him, but honestly, I didn't know how I would have reacted to learning the truth years earlier. Maybe he was right. Maybe I would have been too intimidated to be myself around him. Maybe I would have thought it was all some kind of game. But now I was walking into this situation as a successful businesswoman in my own right. I might not have $800 million, but I had earned every penny of my wealth through hard work and determination. I had nothing to be ashamed of, or so I thought. The front door of the house was opened by a woman in a uniform, an actual maid. It tried not to stare as she led us through a foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my mama's entire house. "Master Pablo," said the maid, "your family is waiting for you in the main dining room." As we walked through the house, I noticed everything. The oil paintings on the walls that looked like they belonged in museums. The furniture that was clearly antique and probably priceless. The flowers in every room that were fresh and arranged by someone who definitely wasn't a family member. This was old money. Not just wealth, but generational established powerful wealth. Pablo stopped outside a set of double doors and turned to me. "Carolina, whatever happens in there, please remember that I love you. Please remember that none of this changes how I feel about you." Before I could ask what he meant, he opened the doors and we walked into a dining room that was larger than the entire first floor of the house I grew up in. Seated around a table that could have accommodated 20 people were Pablo's parents and 3 other couples. All adults who looked like they had stepped out of the pages of a luxury lifestyle magazine. The men were wearing suits even though it was Saturday afternoon. The women were dressed in clothing that I could tell was expensive, though I couldn't have named the designers. And at the head of the table sat a man who could only be Pablo's father. tall, distinguished, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to take in every detail of my appearance in a single glance. This was a man who was used to being in charge, used to being obeyed, used to getting his way in all things. "Pablo," his father said, standing up. His voice was deep and commanding, the kind of voice that made people pay attention. "So glad you could join us, and you brought a friend." The way he said the word friend made my skin crawl. There was something dismissive about it. Something that suggested I was temporary and unimportant. "Father, I'd like you to meet Carolina, my girlfriend." Pablo's mother, a woman with blonde hair styled in a way that probably required weekly salon visits, smiled politely, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. She had clearly been expecting someone else. "How lovely," she said. "Please sit down." We were just having lunch. As we took our seats, I became acutely aware that I was being studied by everyone at the table. Their eyes moved from my hair to my clothes to my shoes, and I could practically hear their mental calculations about where I shopped and how much I had spent. I was wearing a nice dress, something I had bought specifically for meeting Pablo's family, but it wasn't designer. My shoes were comfortable and professional, but they weren't Louis Vuitton. My jewelry was pretty, but not precious stones. In short, I looked like exactly what I was, a successful young businesswoman who had worked for everything she had. But in this room, surrounded by people who had never worked a day in their lives, it might as well have been wearing a sign that said, "Not one of us." "So Carolina," Pablo's father said after we'd been served salads by staff members, I hadn't even noticed entering the room. "Tell us about yourself. What does your father do?" The question hit me like a slap. Not what do you do or tell us about your interests, but what does your father do? As if my value as a person was determined entirely by what kind of man had raised me. My father passed away when I was 12. My mother is a retired teacher. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as glances were exchanged around the table, and I knew that with those 2 sentences, I had been categorized and dismissed. "Oh," Pablo's mother said, and now her smile looked more like pity. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Teaching is such noble work." Noble. Another loaded word. Noble meant underpaid. Noble meant an important in their world. One of the other women at the table, someone I hadn't been introduced to, leaned forward. "And what do you do, dear?" "I own 2 businesses, a cleaning service company and a food distribution business." Another exchange of glances. I was starting to feel like I was in a courtroom where everyone had already decided I was guilty. "How industrious," Pablo's father said. "And where did you study business?" "I didn't study business formally. I started my companies while I was in high school and college, and I learned through experience." "Self-taught," one of the men said, nodding in a way that was clearly not impressed. How interesting. Pablo reached under the table and squeezed my hand. I could feel his tension, and I realized that this was going exactly as badly as he had feared it would. But I wasn't done. These people might have more money than I could comprehend, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. "Yes, self-taught," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I've built my businesses from nothing into companies that employ over 200 people across 4 states. Last year, my combined revenue was over 12 million. That got their attention. 12 million wasn't Pablo's father's 800 million, but it wasn't exactly pocket change either. 12 million, Pablo's father repeated. "That's quite impressive for someone so young. Tell me, how does one go from teaching background to such success?" The way he said teaching background made it clear that he couldn't understand how anything good could come from such humble beginnings. "Hard work," I said simply. "I identified needs in my community and I filled them. I treated my employees well and my customers better. I reinvested my profits wisely and expanded strategically. And you did all this while Pablo was... What was Pablo doing during this time? I could feel Pablo tense up beside me. This was dangerous territory. Pablo was pursuing his education and building his own business, I said carefully. His education in medicine, you mean? I looked at Pablo, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Pablo can speak for himself about his educational choices, I said diplomatically. Pablo's father's eyes narrowed. Pablo, would you like to tell us about your educational choices? The entire table was watching now. I could feel the weight of their attention, their expectation, their judgment. Pablo cleared his throat. Father, I actually finished my degree in automotive technology. I own a classic car restoration business now. If I thought the silence after my father's comment was bad, this silence was absolutely deadly. Automotive technology? Pablo's mother repeated as if she was saying something distasteful. You mean you're a mechanic? One of the other men said bluntly. I'm a restoration specialist, Pablo said, finding his voice. I work with vintage and classic automobiles. My shop has a year-long waiting list. A mechanic, Pablo's father said, his voice flat and cold. My son is a mechanic. Every successful mechanic, I interjected. Pablo's work has been featured in classic car magazines. He's restored vehicles for celebrities and collectors all over the country. And how exactly did you afford to start this restoration business? Pablo's father asked. Here it was the moment of truth. Pablo looked at me, then back at his father. Carolina provided the startup funding. You could have heard a pin drop in that enormous dining room. I see, Pablo's father said slowly. So not only did you abandon medicine to become a mechanic, but you had to have your girlfriend pay for it. It was an investment, I said firmly. And it was a good one. The business is extremely profitable. I'm sure it is, Pablo's mother said. And now there was no pretense of politeness in her voice. How convenient for you, excuse me. Well, dear, you must see how this looks. A young woman from your background attaches herself to our son, convinces him to abandon his medical career, and then funds a business that makes them both money. It's quite strategic. I felt my face get hot. Are you suggesting that I'm not suggesting anything, dear? I'm simply observing. Pablo stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. Mother, that's enough. Is it, Pablo? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you've been manipulated by someone who saw an opportunity and took it. Carolina didn't manipulate me into anything. She supported my dreams when no one else would. Your dreams? Pablo's father laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your dreams were to fix cars. That's what we invested in your education for. That's what all those years of preparation were for. I never wanted Toby a doctor. That was your dream, not mine. And what about Maria? Pablo's mother asked. The whole table went quiet again. I looked around confused. What about Maria? I asked. Pablo looked sick. Carolina, Maria Santangelo, Pablo's mother said, smiling at me with cold satisfaction. Pablo's fiancé, my world tilted. His what? Well, not officially engaged yet, but it's been understood for years that Pablo and Maria would marry. Her father and my husband have been business partners for over 20 years. The families have been planning this union since the children were teenagers. I turned to stare at Pablo. Is this true? Carolina, I can't explain. Is it true? It's complicated. I stood up so fast I knocked over my water glass. The sound of crystal hitting crystal rang through the room. It's complicated. Your family has been planning your marriage to another woman for years, and it's complicated. Never agreed to marry her, Pablo said desperately. I've been trying to figure out how to tell them about you, about us for 6 years. You've been trying to figure it out for 6 years? Pablo's father stood up now, too. Young lady, I think you need to calm down. Don't you tell me to calm down. I snapped, spinning to face him. Do you have any idea what your son and I have been through together? What we've built together? What you've built, Pablo's mother said mockingly, is based on Ailey. Pablo has responsibilities to this family. Obligations that were set in stone long before he met you. Obligations. He's not property. He's a human being with the right to choose his own life. But what hurt more than their judgment was watching Pablo let them say these things to me, the man I loved, theme and I had supported and funded and believed in for 6 years. Couldn't find the strength to defend me against his family's attacks. You know what I said? Looking directly at Pablo's mother. You're right about one thing. I am beneath your social station. I'm beneath it because I have class and dignity and the ability to see people for who they are rather than what they own. You may have money, but you don't have character. You may have status, but you don't have decency. I turned to Pablo. And you let them talk to me like this. You brought me here knowing this would happen, and you're standing there letting it happen. Catalina, please. I'm done, Pablo. I'm done with this family, and I'm done pretending that what we have can survive in this environment. I walked out of that dining room, through the marble foyer, past the crystal chandelier, and out the front door of that mansion. Pablo followed me, calling my name, but I didn't stop until I reached my car. Catalina, wait, please. I turned around and looked at him. This man I had loved for 6 years. This man I'd planned to marry. This man I had sacrificed for and supported and believed in for 6 years. Pablo, do you love me? You know I do. Do you want to marry me? Yes, but there's no but, Pablo. Either you want to marry me or you don't. Either you choose me or you choose them. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Your family just spent an hour insulting me, questioning my motives, and making it clear that they will never accept me, and you stood there and let them do it, so now you have to choose. Pablo ran his hands through his hair, looking more conflicted than I had ever seen him. Carolina, you don't understand the pressure I'm under, the expectations, the business arrangements. I understand perfectly. Your family has built their empire on controlling people, including you, and you're letting them. What do you want me to do? Walk away from everything? My family, my inheritance, my legacy? I want you to be a man who stands up for the woman he loves. For a moment, Pablo looked like he might find that strength. His jaw set, his shoulders straightened, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he was going to choose love over money. But then his father appeared in the doorway behind him. Pablo, son, come back inside. Let's discuss this rationally. And just like that, I watched the fight drain out of him. Catalina, just give me some time. Let me figure out how to handle this. How much time, Pablo? Another 6 years. No, just a few months. Maybe I can convince them. Convince them of what? That I'm worthy of their approval. Pablo, I don't want their approval. I want you to choose me without needing their permission. But I could see in his eyes that he wasn't ready to make that choice. Thisman, who could rebuild engines and create beautiful art with his hands, who could run a successful business and charm customers from all over the country, couldn't find the strength to stand up to his own family. I need time, he said again. And those 3 words broke my heart completely. Then take your time, I said, getting into my car. But don't expect me to wait forever. I drove away from that mansion with tears streaming down my face. But they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. Rage at Pablo's family for their arrogance and cruelty. Rage at Pablo for his weakness. But mostly rage at myself for believing that love would be enough to overcome everything. The next few months were the darkest period of my life since my father had passed away. Pablo tried calling me every day, sending flowers, showing up at my office. But I couldn't forget the image of him standing there silently while his family tore me apart. I threw myself into work. My businesses were growing rapidly, and I used that growth as a distraction from my broken heart. I expanded the cleaning service into 2 more states. I acquired 3 smaller food distribution companies and integrated them into my operations. I hired more staff, opened new offices, and worked 18-hour days until I was too exhausted to think about Pablo. But late at night, when the office was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I couldn't stop replaying that awful lunch. The way they had looked at me, the things they'd said, the way Pablo had failed to defend me. 3 months after that disastrous meeting, Pablo showed up at my apartment at midnight. He looked terrible, like he hadn't been sleeping or eating properly. "Catalina, please. We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I let him in. "I left them," he said as soon as we sat down. "I told my parents that I'm going to marry you whether they approve or not." My heart wanted to leap, but my brain was more cautious. And what did they say? They disowned me, cut me off completely. No more family money, no more inheritance, no more business connections. I studied his face. "And how do you feel about that?" "Terrified," he admitted. "I've never had to survive completely on my own before. But I realized something, Catalina. You've been surviving on your own since you were 17 years old. You built everything you have from nothing, and you did it with grace and strength and intelligence. You never needed anyone else's money or approval or connections. You are the strongest person I know, and I want to be worthy of you." For the first time in months, I felt hope stirring in my chest. "Pablo, are you sure? Really sure? Because I won't go through this again. I won't be humiliated by your family again, and I won't watch you fail to stand up for me again. I'm sure, more sure than I've ever been about anything in my life." That night, we talked until the sun came up. Pablo told me about the fights he'd with his parents, the threats they'd made, the way they had tried to manipulate him into staying in line. He told me about Maria, the woman they had chosen for him, how they'd been pushing him to propose to her, and how they had threatened to cut him off if he didn't comply. "The thing is," Pablo said as we watched the sun rise through my apartment window, "Maria doesn't want to marry me either. She's in love with someone else, someone her family would never approve of. We're both victims of our family's ambitions. So what happens now?" I asked. "Now I prove to you that I can be the man you deserve. Now I build a life that's worthy of the woman who saw my potential when no one else did." 2 weeks later, Pablo proposed to me properly. Not with a family ring that had been chosen by committee, but with earring he had designed himself and paid for with money he had earned from his own business. He got down on one knee in the garage of his restoration shop, surrounded by the classic cars he loved, and asked me to marry him. I said yes, but I should have known that Pablo's family wouldn't give up that easily. The harassment started almost immediately. Pablo's father began calling his business customers, suggesting that maybe they should reconsider using a disgraced mechanic. Pablo's mother started spreading rumors in their social circles about the gold digger who had seduced their son away from his proper place in society. But the worst part was what they did to me. Someone, and I knew exactly who, started filing complaints against my businesses, health department inspections that found violations that didn't exist, Labor Department investigations into my employment practices, tax audits that took months to resolve and cost thousands in legal fees. Every week brought a new crisis, a new attack on something I had built with my own hands. It was psychological warfare designed to exhaust me financially and emotionally until I gave up and walked away from Pablo. "They're never going to stop," I told Pablo one evening after spending the entire day dealing with lawyers about the latest frivolous lawsuit against my cleaning service. "As long as we're together, they're going to keep coming after me." "Then we get married," Pablo said simply. "We get married and we show them that they can't break us." "Pablo, a wedding won't stop them. It might even make them more desperate. Then we elope. We go to Vegas. We get married by an Elvis impersonator. And we don't give them the satisfaction of a big wedding they can ruin. I looked at this man who had finally found his courage, who was willing to fight for our love even though it meant losing everything he had grown up with. "No," I said, "we're not eloping." Pablo looked confused. "We're going to have a proper wedding. We're going to invite everyone we care about. We're going to celebrate our love openly and proudly. And if your family wants to try to ruin it, let them try." "God, Alina, are you sure?" "After everything they've put us through," I smiled at him, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine. "Baby, your family has no idea what they're dealing with. They think I'm some helpless little girl they can intimidate and control. They have no clue who Carolina really is. What do you mean?" "I mean, it's time for them to find out exactly what kind of woman their son fell in love with." Planning our wedding became my new mission. Not just planning a party, but planning a statement, a declaration, a final definitive answer to everyone who'd ever questioned my worth or my place in Pablo's life. I booked the most exclusive venue in Memphis, the Peabody Hotel's rooftop garden overlooking the Mississippi River. I hired the best caterer, the best florist, the best photographer. I ordered a dress that was absolutely stunning. Not the most expensive dress in the world, beautiful and sophisticated and perfect for me. More importantly, I made sure that our guest list included everyone who mattered. My family and friends, of course. Pablo's colleagues from the automotive restoration world. My business partners and employees. Community leaders who had watched me build my companies from nothing. And yes, I invited Pablo's family too. Cudina, they won't come. And even if they do come, they'll just use it as an opportunity to cause more problems. "Let them try," I said calmly. "This is our day, and I plan to make sure everyone remembers it." What Pablo didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had been planning more than just a wedding. I had been planning the most satisfying moment of revenge in the history of Tennessee society weddings. See, while Pablo's family had been busy trying to destroy my businesses, I had been busy expanding them not just in size but in influence. My cleaning service now had contracts with some of the biggest corporations in the South. My food distribution company supplied major hotel chains, restaurant groups, and entertainment venues across multiple states. More importantly, I had been building relationships, real relationships with real people who respected what I had accomplished. Politicians, business leaders, community activists, people who understood the value of hard work and determination, and I had been working on something special, something that would change everything. You see, Pablo's restoration shop had caught the attention of some very important people. His work was so exceptional that he had been approached by a consortium of investors who wanted to partner with him on a massive project, a luxury automotive restoration and customization facility that would serve clients from all over the world. The project was worth $840 million, and guess who was heading up the investment consortium? That's right, Carolina's newest business venture. Heritage Automotive Holdings, LLC. I had been quietly building this company for months, using profits from my other businesses and bringing in outside investors who believed in the vision. The plan was to create the most exclusive high-end automotive restoration facility in the world, focusing on vehicles worth millions of dollars each. Pablo knew about the project, of course. He was going to be the lead restoration specialist and part-owner. What he didn't know was that I was the primary investor and controlling partner. What he definitely didn't know was that his signature on the partnership agreement was scheduled to happen the day after our wedding. What he definitely didn't know was that I had been planning to make this announcement at our wedding reception in front of everyone who had ever doubted me. But life, as you know, rarely goes according to plan. The morning of our wedding, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at Mama's house. It was tradition for the bride to spend the night before the wedding away from her groom, and I had wanted to spend that last night as a single woman in the place where my dreams had first begun, Mama brought me coffee and sat on the edge of my bed just like she used to when I was little and had bad dreams. Baby girl, you sure about this? Sure about what, Mama? Marrying Pablo? Sure about marrying into that family? I know you love that boy, but his people, they don't want you there. I sat up and looked at my mother. This woman who had raised me and my brothers on practically nothing, who had worked multiple jobs to keep us fed and clothed, who had never complained about the hand life had dealt her. Mama, do you remember what you told me when Daddy died? I told you a lot of things, baby. You told me that some people in this world would try to make me feel small because of where I came from. You told me that I could either let them make me small, or I could show them exactly how big I really was. Mama smiled. And which one are you planning to do today? I'm planning to show them exactly how big Carolina really is. Hours later, I was standing in front of a mirror in the bridal suite at the Peabody Hotel wearing the most beautiful dress I had ever seen. It wasn't the most expensive dress in the world, but it was perfect for me. Elegant, sophisticated, and strong. My maid of honor, Shanice, was fussing with my veil when there was a knock at the door. Come in, I called, expecting to see Pablo or maybe the wedding coordinator. Instead, Pablo's mother walked into the room. She was dressed impeccably as always, but there was something different about her expression. She looked nervous. Mrs. Richardson, I said politely, I didn't expect to see you before the ceremony. Carolina, we need to talk. Shanice looked at me questioningly, and I nodded for her to give us some privacy. What can I do for you? I asked once we were alone. Pablo's mother walked to the window and looked out at the Mississippi River far below. I want to make you an offer, she said without turning around. What kind of offer? $5 million. I felt my heart skip a beat, but I kept my voice steady. $5 million for what? To walk away, to leave Pablo at the altar, and disappear from our lives forever. The room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. You want to pay me to abandon your son on our wedding day? I want to pay you to do what's best for everyone involved. I walked over to stand next to her at the window. Down below, guests were already arriving for the ceremony. I could see me family members getting out of cars, dressed in their best clothes, excited to celebrate this day with me. Mrs. Richardson, can I ask you something? Of course. What are you so afraid of? I'm not afraid of anything. Yes, you are. You're terrified of me. You're terrified of what I represent. And what do you think you represent? Change. I represent the possibility that your son might actually be happy instead of just obedient. I represent the idea that love might be more important than social status. I represent everything your world tries to keep out. Pablo's mother was quiet for a long moment. Carolina, you seem like a nice enough girl, but you don't understand the pressures of our world. The expectations, the responsibilities, the fear. I interrupted. You're afraid that if Pablo chooses love over duty, other people in your world might start making the same choice. You're afraid that if your son can be happy with a woman like me, maybe your whole social system isn't as important as you thought it was. That's ridiculous, is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're willing to pay $5 million to avoid finding out. She turned back to the window. $6 million? Mrs. Richardson, you could offer me $60 million and my answer would be the same. I'm not for sale. Everyone has a price. You're wrong. Some things can't be bought. Self-respect, dignity, love, these things don't have price tags. You're making a mistake. This marriage will never work. Our social circles will never accept you. Our friends will never welcome you. Our business associates will always question your motives. Is mild. Mrs. Richardson, I don't need your social circles. I don't need your friends. And I certainly don't need your business associates. I have my own success, my own relationships, my own life. The only thing I want from your world is your son. And when that's not enough, when you realize that marrying Pablo means being excluded from half the opportunities and connections that his name used to provide, Then I'll create my own opportunities. I've been doing that my whole life." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how to break me down. "Carolina, there's something else you should know. What? Pablo signed the prenuptial agreement." My blood went cold. "What prenuptial agreement?" "The one our lawyers drew up. Pablo signed it yesterday. It protects the family assets and ensures that if this marriage fails, you won't be entitled to any portion of the family wealth." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Not because I wanted Pablo's family money, but because Pablo had signed a legal document about our marriage without telling me about it. "Where is this prenup?" She pulled a thick document out of her purse and handed it to me. As I read through the pages, my heart sank lower and lower. This wasn't just a prenuptial agreement. It was a complete contract controlling every aspect of our married life. Where we could live, how many children we could have, what kind of work I could do, what social events we could attend. It was a document designed to turn me into a kept woman, dependent on Pablo's family's approval for everything. And Pablo had signed it. "Mrs. Richardson," I said, my voice shaking with rage, "get out of my room. Carolina, I know this is upsetting, but get out." She left quickly, and I was alone with the prenuptial agreement and the devastating knowledge that the man I was about to marry had agreed to terms that would essentially make me a prisoner in my own life. I took one last look at myself in that mirror, no longer wearing my wedding dress, but instead a simple black dress I had brought as a backup. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure, unadulterated rage mixed with heartbreak. Pablo's mother thought she could manipulate me with threats and intimidation tactics, but she had no idea what she had just unleashed. You see, there was no prenuptial agreement. Pablo never signed anything. His mother had fabricated that entire story to try to break me down right before my wedding. She counted on me being too emotional, too overwhelmed to think clearly. She thought she could plant seeds of doubt about Pablo's loyalty and watch me crumble. But Carolina doesn't crumble. Carolina gets even. I walked to the door of the bridal suite, took a deep breath, and stepped into the hallway. I could hear the murmur of voices from the ceremony space below. Our guests receded. The music was playing softly, and everyone was waiting for the bride to make her grand entrance. Instead, they were about to witness something entirely different. As I walked down the hallway toward the elevator, I passed several family members and friends who looked confused to see me in a black dress instead of my wedding gown. "Carolina, honey, is everything okay?" asked my cousin Denise. "Everything is about to be perfect," I replied with a smile that probably looked more dangerous than reassuring. The elevator ride down to the ceremony level felt like it lasted forever, but it gave me time to compose myself and prepare for what I was about to do. When those doors opened, I was no longer the heartbroken bride who had been manipulated by her future mother-in-law. I was Carolina, businesswoman, entrepreneur, and someone who had built an empire with nothing but determination and intelligence. He stepped out of the elevator and walked directly toward the ceremony space. The wedding coordinator, a sweet woman named Betty, rushed over to me with a panicked expression. "Carolina, what are you doing? The ceremony is supposed to start in 5 minutes and you're not in your dress. Betty, I need you to gather everyone in the reception hall instead. Tell them there's been a change of plans, but not a worry." "A change of plans? What kind of change of plans?" "The kind that's going to make this day unforgettable." Betty looked like she wanted to ask more questions, but something in my expression told her not to push. She nodded and hurried away to redirect the guest. I made my way to the groom's waiting area, where Pablo was pacing nervously with his groomsmen. When he saw me, his face went through about 5 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. "Colina, why aren't you in your dress? What's happening? We need to talk privately." The groomsmen quickly made themselves scarce, and Pablo and I were alone in the small room adjacent to the ceremony space. Pablo, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth. Of course, anything. Did you sign a prenuptial agreement? Pablo looks genuinely confused. What prenuptial agreement? Your mother just came to my room with the contract she claimed you had signed. A contract that would essentially make me a prisoner in your family. Pablo's face went from confused to furious faster than I had ever seen it. She did what? She tried to convince me that you had agreed to let your family control every aspect of our married life. She showed me a document with your signature on it. Carolina, I swear to you, on my father's grave, I mean on my grandfather's grave, I have never seen signed or agreed to any prenuptial agreement. My mother is lying. Looking at his face, seeing the genuine shock and anger, there I knew he was telling the truth. But that almost made it worse. It meant this mother was so desperate to get rid of me that she was willing to forge documents and manipulate both of us on her wedding day. Pablo, your family will never accept me. Never. Your mother just proved that she's willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate to break us up. How do we build a marriage under these circumstances? Pablo sat down heavily and put his head in his hands. I don't know, Carolina. I honestly don't know. Well, I do. He looked up at me. I know exactly how we handle this, but first I need to know something. Are you willing to choose me over them? Not just in words, but in actions. Are you willing to put our marriage first, no matter what it costs you? Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Even if it means losing your family's money. I already lost their money when I told them I was marrying you. Even if it means publicly standing up to them in front of everyone who matters to them. Pablo stood up and took my hands. Golina, I should have done that months ago. I should have done it the day they first disrespected you. I was a coward, and I let my fear of losing my family's approval hurt the woman I love more than anything in this world. And are you ready to stop being a coward? I'm ready to be the man you deserve. I smiled at him, the first genuine smile I had given him in hours. Good, because what's about to happen next is going to require you to be very, very brave. What are you planning, Godina? Instead of answering, I kissed him. Not a gentle, sweet kiss, but a passionate, claiming kiss that reminded both of us why we had fallen in love in the first place. I asked him when we broke apart, "Do you trust me with my life? Then go tell our guests that the bride needs a few more minutes to prepare, but that everyone should gather in the reception hall for an important announcement." Pablo looked confused, but nodded. "And what will you be doing?" "I'll be getting ready to show your family exactly who they've been messing with." After Pablo left, I took out my phone and made 3 quick calls. The first was to my assistant, Jennifer, who managed my business affairs. The second was to my lawyer, Robert, who had been handling some very important contracts for me. The third was to someone Pablo's family would never have expected me to know. Maria Santarello, the one they had been trying to force Pablo to marry. Yes, that's Maria. The one they had been planning his marriage to since they were teenagers. You see, while Pablo's family had been busy trying to destroy my relationship, I had been doing some research of my own. I had learned everything there was to know about their business dealings, their social connections, and their family arrangements, including the fact that Maria Santarello was just as much a victim of their manipulation as Pablo and I were. Maria answered on the first ring. "Carolina, is everything okay? Isn't today your wedding day?" "It is, and I have a proposition for you. How would you like to help me give both of our families the shock of their lives?" There was a pause. Then Maria started laughing. "I'm listening." 2 minutes later, I walked into their reception hall where all our wedding guests had gathered. The room was beautifully decorated with flowers and elegant table settings, but instead of a celebration, there was an undercurrent of confusion and concern. Pablo was standing near the front of the room, looking nervous but determined. His family was seated at their designated table, his mother looking smug and satisfied, clearly believing that her little manipulation had worked. My family and friends were clustered together, whispering amongst themselves and shooting worried glances in my direction. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what. The business associates, community leaders, and other important guests I had invited were seated throughout the room, their expressions ranging from curious to concerned. I walked to the front of the room where a microphone had been set up for the traditional wedding toast. The room gradually fell silent as everyone turned to look at me. Good afternoon, everyone. I know you're all wondering why we're gathered here in the reception hall instead of celebrating a wedding ceremony. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The truth is there's been a change of plans, not because Pablo and I don't love each other. We do more than ever, but because before we exchange vows there are some things that need to be said, some truths that need to be told. Some people who need to understand exactly what kind of family they're trying to join. Pablo's mother started to stand up, but Pablo's father put a hand on her arm to stop her. You see, for the past 6 years, I've been in love with an amazing man. A man who is talented, hardworking, passionate, and kind. A man who deserves better than the family that raised him. More murmurs, this time with a shocked undertone. Pablo's family has spent months trying to break us up. They've insulted my background, questioned my motives, threatened my businesses, and today, on what should be the happiest day of our lives, they tried to manipulate me with lies and forged documents. Pablo's mother shot to her feet. That's not true, Mrs. Richardson. Please sit down. I'm not finished. Something in my tone must have convinced her that resistance was futile because she slowly sank back into her chair. But here's what Pablo's family doesn't understand. They think I'm some poor girl trying to marry into money. They think I need their approval, their acceptance, their blessing. I paused and looked directly at Pablo's parents. They're wrong. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder of documents. Since Pablo's family is so concerned about financial arrangements and business partnerships, let me share some information with all of you. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is a contract for an $840 million automotive restoration and customization facility project. The largest project of its kind ever attempted in the southern United States. The room went dead silent. The project will create over 2,000 jobs, attract international clients, and establish Tennessee as the premier destination for luxury automotive services in North America. Pablo was staring at me with wide eyes, clearly having no idea where this was going. The primary contractor for this project was going to be Pablo Richardson, owner of Classic Dreams Automotive, a man whose talent and skill I have personally witnessed and supported. I held up the contract so everyone could see it. This contract was scheduled to be signed tomorrow morning. It would have made Pablo's business one of the most successful automotive restoration companies in the world. Pablo's father was leaning forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on the document in my hands. However, there's something else you all should know. The primary investor in this project, the person who put together the funding, organized the consortium, and made this entire opportunity possible, is Heritage Automotive Holdings, LLC. I smiled and looked around the room. A company that I own. A company that I built with profits from my other businesses. A company that represents my vision for the future of luxury automotive restoration. You could have heard a pin drop in that reception hall. So when Pablo's family suggests that I'm trying to marry him for his money, they've got it exactly backwards. I'm not marrying Pablo for his money. I was planning to make Pablo rich beyond his wildest dreams. Pablo looked like he might faint. But there's the thing about business partnerships. They require trust. They require mutual respect. They require people who honor their commitments and treat their partners with dignity. I looked directly at Pablo's parents. Pablo's family has shown me that they don't understand any of these concepts. They've shown me that they believe in manipulation, intimidation, and control rather than partnership and respect. I tore the contract in half. The sound echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. Pablo Richardson will not be the primary contractor for the Heritage Automotive Holdings project. Pablo's father stood up so quickly he knocked over his chair. You can't do that. That's $800 million. Yes, it is. And it was going to be Pablo's. But your family's behavior has convinced me that Pablo might not be ready for this kind of responsibility. Pablo looked streaking. Carolina, what are you saying? I'm saying that I can't enter into an $840 million business partnership with someone whose family thinks it's acceptable to lie, manipulate, and forge documents to get their way. I can't risk that kind of money on someone who might prioritize his family's approval over his professional integrity. The room was in chaos. Now Pablo's family members were arguing amongst themselves. My family was looking confused and concerned, and the business associates in attendance were whispering frantically about the implications of what they had just witnessed. But I wasn't finished. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Within seconds, I was connected to a conference call with my business partners and legal team. Robert, are you there? I'm here, Carolina. Please announce the new primary contractor for the Heritage Automotive Holdings project. The new primary contractor will be Santangelo Custom Automotive, owned and operated by Maria Santangelo of Nashville, Tennessee. If the room had been quiet before, it was absolutely dead silent now. Pablo's mother looked like she had seen a ghost. Maria Santangelo. At that moment, Maria herself walked into the reception hall. She was dressed in a beautiful business suit and looked absolutely radiant and absolutely nothing like the obedient daughter Pablo's parents thought they knew. Hello, Mrs. Richardson, Maria said, with a bright smile. Surprise! Pablo's father was sputtering. Maria, what? How? What is this? This is taking control of my own life just like Carolina taught me to do. I don't understand, Pablo's mother said weakly. Let me explain, I said, taking back control of the room. While your family was busy trying to manipulate Pablo and me, I reached out to Maria to learn more about the woman you had chosen for your son. Do you know what I discovered? No one answered. I discovered that Maria is an incredibly talented automotive engineer who graduated top of her class from Vanderbilt University. I discovered that she has been designing custom modifications for high-end vehicles as a hobby for years. I discovered that she's innovative ideas that could revolutionize the luxury automotive restoration industry. I looked at Pablo's parents with satisfaction. Also discovered that Maria has been in love with someone else for 3 years, someone her family would never approve of, and that she was just as trapped by your family's manipulation as Pablo was. Maria stepped forward. Carolina offered me something my family never did, the chance to build a career based on my abilities rather than my willingness to be an obedient daughter. So, let me get this straight, Pablo said, and I could hear the understanding dawning in his voice. You gave Maria the $840 million contract that was supposed to be mine. That's correct, because my family's behavior convinced you that I wasn't trustworthy enough to handle it. That's also correct. Pablo looked around the room at his stunned parents, at Maria's confident smile, at her guests who were witnessing the most dramatic wedding reception in Memphis history. Then he started laughing. Not bitter laughter, not angry laughter, but genuine, delighted, amazed laughter. Carolina, you are absolutely incredible. Am I? You just gave away $840 million to make a point about integrity and respect. I did. You just destroyed my family's plans for both me and Maria. I did. You just showed everyone in this room that you don't need anyone's approval or permission to change the entire course of people's lives. I did. Pablo walked over to me and took my hands. And you did all of this because you love me enough to demand that I be treated with respect. I did. He got down on one knee right there in front of everyone. Carolina, will you marry me? Not because our families approve, not because it makes financial sense, not because it's convenient or expected or safe. Will you marry me because we love each other enough to build something beautiful together, even if we have to build it completely on our own? The room held its breath. I looked down at this man who had finally found his courage. This man who was willing to give up everything for love. This man who understood that I had just chosen our relationship over $840 million. But I wasn't quite ready to say yes. Pablo, there's one more thing. Anything. I need to know that you're ready to put our marriage first. Not just ahead of your family's money, but ahead of their approval, their social connections, their business relationships, all of it. I am. Even if it means they disown you completely, especially if it means they disown me completely. I looked over at Pablo's parents. His mother was crying, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of sadness or rage. His father looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. Mrs. Richardson? I called out. Do you have anything you'd like to say? She wiped her eyes and stood up slowly. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. I thought she might finally acknowledge that she had underestimated me and treated me unfairly. Instead, she looked at Pablo with cold fury. If you marry that woman, you are no son of mine. The room gasped. Pablo stood up, still holding my hands, and looked directly at his mother. Then I guess you don't have Ason anymore. He turned back to me. Carolina, I choose you over money, over family, over everything. I choose you. That's when I started crying. Not sad tears, but tears of relief and joy and overwhelming love for this man who had finally become the person I always knew he could be. Yes, I whispered. Yes, yes, I'll marry you right now today in front of everyone that matters to us. The room erupted in applause. Well, most of the room. My family and friends were cheering. The business associates were clapping politely, and Maria was grinning from ear to ear. Pablo's family, on the other hand, was gathering their things to leave. Wait, I called out, and the room fell silent again. Pablo's parents stopped at the door and turned back. Mrs. Richardson, before you go, there's one more thing you should know. What now? She asked wearily. I smiled. The Heritage Automotive Holdings project, the one I just gave to Maria, what about it? It's going to employ over 2,000 people. People from backgrounds like mine. People who work with their hands. People who understand the value of hard work and determination. I paused for a fact, and every single one of those employees is going to know that. This opportunity exists because a poor girl from North Memphis believed in giving people chances based on their abilities rather than their pedigrees. Pablo's mother's face went pale. So every time you drive through Tennessee and see one of our facilities, every time you read about our success in the business journals, every time you hear the name Heritage Automotive Holdings mentioned in your social circles, you'll remember that it all started because you tried to humiliate someone who turned out to be more powerful than you ever imagined. I walked closer to them. Mrs. Richardson, you try to make me feel small because of where I came from, but you forgot something important. Sometimes the people who start with nothing are the ones who end up changing everything. With that, Pablo's parents left their reception hall, followed by their friends and business associates. The room was much quieter now, but somehow it felt warmer, more intimate, more real. Pablo pulled me close and whispered in my ear, "Are we really going to get married right now? Do you want to?" More than anything, I looked around at the people who remained. My family, my true friends, Pablo's colleagues from the automotive industry who had chosen to stay, Maria and a few other guests who understood what they had just witnessed. Then let's do it. And that's exactly what we did. We didn't have a minister, but my Uncle James had gotten ordained online just in case we needed a backup plan. We didn't have traditional wedding vows, but we spoke from our hearts about love and partnership and building something beautiful together. We didn't have the fancy ceremony we had planned, but we had something better. A wedding that was entirely our own, surrounded by people who truly supported our love. When Uncle James pronounced us husband and wife, the cheers were genuine and heartfelt. When Pablo kissed me, it tasted like freedom, impossibility, and the beginning of our real life together. As we danced our first dance as married couple to music playing from someone's phone, I caught sight of Maria talking animatedly with some of the automotive industry professionals who had stayed for the ceremony. "Looks like Maria is already networking," Pablo said, following my gaze. "Good. She's going to need those connections for what's coming next." "What do you mean?" I smiled up at my new husband. "Pablo, honey, you don't really think I gave away $840 million out of spite, do you?" He looked confused. "Heritage Automotive Holdings is going to be the most successful company of its kind in the world, and Maria is going to do incredible things with it. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for other businesses to partner with us." "Carolina, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that Classic Dreams Automotive just became the exclusive restoration partner for Heritage Automotive Holdings. I'm saying that your business is about to grow beyond anything you ever imagined. I'm saying that we're about to build an empire together." Pablo stopped dancing and stared at me. "You mean I mean that your family just walked away not only from $840 million, but from the chance to be part of the biggest automotive revolution in American history, and you planned all of this?" "Baby, I've been planning this for months. I knew your family would never accept me willingly. So I made sure that when they finally showed their true colors, I would be in a position to show them exactly what they were giving up." Pablo shook his head in amazement. "Carolina, you are absolutely terrifying. Is that a good thing?" "It's the best thing. It means I married a woman who was smarter, stronger, and more strategic than anyone who ever underestimated her." As we continued dancing, I felt a sense of peace and satisfaction that I had never experienced before. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Pablo's family, although that was certainly satisfying, but because I had finally found a partner who was truly my equal. Pablo had chosen love over comfort, integrity over inheritance, partnership over privilege. He had proven that he was worthy of the woman who had believed in him from the very beginning. And I had proven that a girl from North Memphis could not only survive in the world of wealthy, powerful people, she could completely reshape that world according to her own vision. "So what happens now?" Pablo asked as the song came to an end. I looked around at her unconventional wedding reception, Maria deep in conversation with potential business partners, my family celebrating with genuine joy, our real friends toasting our happiness with champagne and hope for the future. Now we build the life we've always dreamed of together. Even without my family's money, Pablo, baby, we never needed your family's money. We have something much more valuable. What's that? We have each other. We have our talents. We have our determination. And we have a very, very lucrative business empire to run. Pablo laughed and spun me around. "Mrs. Richardson, I think this is going to be the most interesting marriage in Memphis history. Mr. Richardson, I guarantee it." As the evening continued and our unconventional wedding reception turned into the kind of celebration that people would talk about for years, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us to this moment. I had started as a 17-year-old girl selling snacks in a high school cafeteria, dreaming of something bigger than the poverty that I'd been born into. I had built businesses, created jobs, and established myself as a force to be reckoned with in the Tennessee business community. But more than that, I had found love. Real, tested, proven love with a man who was willing to give up everything for the chance to build a life with me. And I had learned something valuable about power and respect and the difference between the two. Pablo's family had power, money, connections, social status, but they didn't have respect. They didn't understand that real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. They didn't understand that true success is measured by the positive impact you have on other people's lives, not by how effectively you can control and manipulate them. I had both power and respect. I had built my success by creating opportunities for others, by treating people fairly, by earning trust rather than demanding obedience. And that's why in the end I won. Not because I had more money than Pablo's family. I didn't, at least not yet. Not because I had more social connections. Theirs were probably still more extensive than mine. Not because I was smarter or more talented. There are smart, talented people everywhere. I won because I understood something they didn't. That real power comes from building others up, not tearing them down. Real strength comes from creating value, not just accumulating wealth. Real success comes from being the kind of person others want to partner with, not the kind of person others fear. As Pablo and I cut our wedding cake, a simple but delicious confection that the hotel pastry chef had quickly assembled when our original wedding cake had been canceled along with the ceremony, I made a silent promise to myself. I promised that every business I built, every opportunity I created, every success I achieved would be used to lift up other people who had started with as little as I had. I promised that I would never forget where I came from or become the kind of person who looked down on others because of their background. And I promised that Pablo and I would build the kind of marriage that would be an example to others of what real partnership could look like. "What are you thinking about?" Pablo asked as we shared our first bite of wedding cake. "I'm thinking about the future, about all the incredible things we're going to accomplish together, such as making Heritage Automotive Holdings the most successful company in the industry, such as creating thousands of jobs for people who deserve good opportunities, such as showing the world that love and partnership and mutual respect are stronger than money and manipulation and control." Pablo smiled. "Sounds like a pretty ambitious agenda for our honeymoon." "Who said anything about a honeymoon? We have an empire to build." "Carolina Richardson, you are going to be a very interesting wife, Pablo Richardson. You have no idea." As the evening wound down and our guests began to leave the reception hall, Maria approached us with a big smile and a business card. "Congratulations, you two, and Carolina. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of a lifetime. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Heritage Automotive Holdings is the most successful company of its kind in the world." "Oh, it will be," Maria said confidently. "I've already got 3 major contracts lined up for next month." 3? It's been 4 hours since you got the job. What can I say? I learned from the best. She winked at me and headed toward the exit. Pablo shook his head. "I feel like I just witnessed the birth of another business empire." "You did? And that's exactly what I was hoping for." "Why?" "Because successful people surround themselves with other successful people. Because lifting others up lifts us all up. Because I'd rather be partners with someone who shares my values than competitors with someone who doesn't." We were the last to leave the reception hall that night. As we walked through the empty space, past the tables still decorated with flowers and the remnants of our unconventional celebration, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This hadn't been the wedding day I had originally planned, but it had been perfect in its own way. It had been honest, authentic, and true to who we were as people. It had been a celebration not just of our love, but of our values, our partnership, and our shared vision for the future. So Pablo said as we waited for the elevator, "Tomorrow we start our new lives as husband and wife. Tomorrow we start conquering the world. Is there a difference?" I laughed and kissed my new husband. "Not for us, there isn't." The elevator doors opened, and as we stepped inside, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked different somehow. Not just because I was now a married woman, but because I had finally fully become the person I was meant to be. I was Carolina Richardson now, entrepreneur, business owner, wife, and someone who had proven that where you come from matters less than where you're determined to go. But most importantly, I was someone who had learned that the best revenge isn't just success. It's success that lifts up others and creates positive change in the world. As the elevator carried us down to the lobby and toward our new life together, I couldn't help but smile. Pablo's family thought they had been dealing with some poor girl from North Memphis who was estering to marry above her station. They had no idea they had been dealing with the future queen of the Tennessee business world. And tomorrow, the real work would begin. Months after our unconventional wedding at the Peabody Hotel, Pablo and I were sitting in our new home, officer reviewing the incredible growth of our combined businesses when we received a phone call that would change everything once again. "Mrs. Richardson, this is Carolina. This is Pablo's mother." I looked at Pablo, who had gone completely still beside me. We hadn't heard from his family since they walked out of our wedding reception. "Mrs. Richardson, how can I help you?" There was a long pause, and I could hear what sounded like quiet crying. "I need to see you, both of you. Please. There's something I need to tell you. Something I need to explain." Pablo took the phone from me. "Mother, what's going on?" "Pablo, I made a terrible mistake. Many terrible mistakes, and I need to make them right." An hour later, we were sitting in our living room across from a woman who looked nothing like the confident, controlling person who had tried to destroy our relationship. Pablo's mother looked smaller somehow, older, and there was a vulnerability in her eyes that I had never seen before. But she wasn't alone. Pablo's father was with her, and he looked equally transformed. Gone was the commanding presence in cold authority. Instead, he sat quietly, his hands clasped in his lap, looking like a man who had been forced to confirm some very uncomfortable truths about himself. "I want to start by apologizing," Pablo's mother began, her voice shaking slightly. "Not just for the things I said and did to Carolina, but for the way I raised Pablo to believe that love was something that could be controlled and arranged like a business transaction." She reached for her husband's hand, and I noticed that he squeezed it gently, supportively. "We both want to apologize," Pablo's father added, his voice much softer than I remembered. "Carolina, I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. I judged you based on your background instead of your character. I tried to interfere in my son's happiness because of my own prejudices and fears." Pablo leaned forward, clearly shocked by this change in both his parents. "What happened?" "You both look different." His mother smiled sadly. "That's because we are different. Or rather, we're finally becoming the people we used to be before we let wealth and status change us into someone we didn't recognize." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. "Carolina, do you remember when I offered you money to leave, Pablo? I remember. What you didn't know was that the money I was offering wasn't your father's money, Pablo. It was mine." Pablo looked confused. "What do you mean yours?" His mother took a deep breath. "Before he married your father, I was Dr. Alina Martinez. I had just finished my residency in pediatric surgery. I was about to start my own practice specializing in treating children from low-income families. My heart stopped. You were a doctor. I was going to be more than a doctor. I was going to be someone who made healthcare accessible to children whose families couldn't afford proper medical care. I had plans, dreams, a vision for how I could change lives. She looked down at her hands and I could see tears starting to fall. But then I met your father at a charity gala. He was handsome, successful, charming, and he convinced me that if I married him, I would never have to work again. He said I could live a life of comfort and luxury, that I could focus on being a wife and mother instead of worrying about the stress and demands of medical career. Pablo's father shifted uncomfortably, clearly hearing this story in a new way. At the time, I thought I was being romantic, he said quietly. I thought I was rescuing this brilliant woman from a difficult career. I didn't realize I was asking her to give up everything that made her who she was. Alina nodded. So I gave it up. I walked away from my medical practice, from my dreams, from everything I had worked so hard to achieve. I convinced myself that being a wealthy man's wife was more important than being a doctor. Pablo was staring at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. But Mom, you never told me. I never told you because I was ashamed that I had given up my dreams so easily. Ashamed that I had let someone else's vision of success replace my own. And as the years went by, I became more and more bitter about the choices I had made. She looked directly at me. Carolina, when I saw you with Pablo, he saw everything I used to be. I saw a woman who had built her own success, who didn't need anyone else's money or approval, who was strong enough to pursue her dreams regardless of what other people thought. The room was completely quiet except for the sound of her quiet crying. And instead of admiring you, instead of being proud that my son had found someone so remarkable, I hated you. I hated you because you represented everything I had given up. Everything I'd been too weak to fight for. Pablo's father cleared his throat, and I supported her in that hatred because it was easier than admitting that we had both become people we didn't like very much. It was easier to blame you for our own unhappiness than to take responsibility for the choices we had made. Pablo reached over and took both his parents' hands. What made you realize this? 3 months ago, when we watched you choose Carolina over our family's money and status, we realized something. We realized that our son had more courage at 26 than either of us had ever had in our entire lives. She stood up and walked to our living room window, looking out at the city lights. That night, after we left your wedding, your father and I had the biggest fight of our 30-year marriage. But it wasn't the kind of fight we usually had. It wasn't about money or business or social obligations. Pablo's father joined her at the window. It was about truth, about who we had become and whether we liked those people. Your father was furious about losing the business connections with Maria's family, furious about the social embarrassment, furious about losing control over you. And I told him, Pablo's father said, his voice growing stronger, that for once in my life I was going to admit when I was wrong. I told him that Carolina was the best thing that had ever happened to Arson, and that we had just made the biggest mistake of our lives by walking away. I felt my breath catch. Pablo's father had defended me. It took me 3 months to work up the courage to say that out loud. 3 months of watching the most successful businesses in Tennessee compete to work with your companies. 3 months of hearing other people in our social circles talk about the brilliant young woman who had built an empire from nothing. 3 months of realizing that we had rejected the daughter-in-law we should have been grateful to have. Alina turned back to face us. But more than that, we spent 3 months looking at our own relationship and realizing that we had built a marriage on all the wrong foundations. What do you mean? I asked gently. Pablo's father sat back down and looked at his wife with an expression I had never seen from him before. Genuine love and admiration. I mean that I spent 30 years treating my wife like an accessory instead of a partner. I asked her to give up her dreams so I could feel important, so I could be the only successful one in our relationship. He reached for Elena's hand again, and I spent 30 years resenting him for that instead of taking responsibility for my own choices. I blamed him for taking away my career, but the truth is I gave it away. No one can take your dreams unless you let them. So what changed? Pablo asked. We went to counseling, Elena said simply. Marriage counseling, individual therapy, the works. We spent 3 months learning how to talk to each other honestly for the first time in decades, and we learned some very uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Pup's father added. We learned that we had become the kind of people who valued status over character, control over love, appearance over authenticity. Elena sat down beside her husband. We learned that watching you choose love over money didn't make us angry because it was wrong. It made us angry because it was right. And we had never been brave enough to make that choice ourselves. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. These people who had tried so hard to control and manipulate us were revealing themselves to be victims of the same system that had tried to control us. So, we decided to make some changes, Pablo's father continued. Starting with our marriage. What kind of changes? Pablo asked. Elena smiled, and this time it was genuine. Well, first I'm going back to medical school. Well, not exactly back. I'm doing a refresher program to update my skills and knowledge. It's been 30 years since I practiced medicine, but I'm going to become Dr. Elena Martinez again. Pablo stood up and looked at both his parents with wonder. You're serious? Dead serious, his father said. And I'm going to support her in every way I can. Not just financially, but emotionally, practically, in all the ways I should have supported her 30 years ago. But, Dad, what about your business? What about all the social obligations and expectations? Pablo's father smiled, and I realized it was the first genuine smile I had ever seen from him. Pablo, I've spent 30 years building a business empire. And for what? To impress people I don't even like? To maintain relationships that are based entirely on money and status? To control my family instead of loving them? He gestured around our living room, which was beautiful but not ostentatious, comfortable but not excessive. Look at what you and Carolina have built. You have successful businesses that create meaningful work for thousands of people. You have a marriage based on love and respect and partnership. You have the admiration of your community and the satisfaction of knowing that your success helps others succeed. We have everything we thought money could buy, Elena added, but you have everything that actually matters. She pulled another set of documents from her envelope. Which brings us to why we're really here. We want to make amends, real amends. What do you mean? I asked. We mean we want to invest in your businesses. Notice Pablo's parents trying to control his life, but as people who believe in supporting others, who create opportunities for people who deserve them. She handed me the documents. This is an investment proposal for $5 million. Not a loan, not a gift with strings attached, but a straight business investment. We want to be partners in your success, not because you're our son and daughter-in-law, but because you're building something that makes the world better. I looked at the documents, then at Pablo, then back at his parents. Elena, Robert, this is incredibly generous, but nothing, Pablo's father said firmly. Carolina, you've already proven that you don't need anyone else's money to be successful. This isn't about need. This is about us putting our money where our values should have been all along. Pablo was reading over my shoulder. $5 million would allow us to expand into 6 more states and create how many more jobs? Alina asked. Probably around 2,000 new positions, I said, still stunned by their proposal. 1,000 families who will have better opportunities because of your vision and hard work. Pablo's father said, That sounds like the kind of investment we want to make. But there are conditions, Elena added, and my heart sinks slightly. What kind of conditions? The condition is that you let us learn from you. Let us be part of creating something meaningful instead of just accumulating wealth. Let us see what it looks like to build a business that changes lives instead of just making money. Pablo's father leaned forward. Carolina, I've spent my entire career focused on profit margins and market share. I want to spend the next part of my life focused on human impact and community benefit. You want to be actively involved in the businesses? Pablo asked. Only if you want us to be, Elena said quickly, and only in ways that aligned with your vision and values. We're not looking to take control or change direction. We're looking to learn how to be better people by working with people who are already doing it right. Over the next 3 hours, we talked about business plans, expansion strategies, and the future of our companies. But more than that, we talked about dreams, second chances, and the courage it takes to choose authenticity over acceptance. Elena, Robert, I said as they were getting ready to leave, would you like to be involved in the business beyond just the financial investment? I mean, as we expand, we're going to need people with different kinds of expertise. Elena's eyes lit up in a way that made her look 20 years younger. What did you have in mind? Well, Elena, as we grow our workforce, we're going to need comprehensive health and wellness programs for our employees. Many of them come from backgrounds where they've never had access to good health care. If you're going back into medicine, maybe you can help us develop programs that serve our workers and their families. She looked like she might cry again, but this time from Joy Cavallina. That would be incredible. And Robert, I continued, you have decades of business experience and connections that could help us navigate the expansion process more efficiently, not to control or direct, but to advise and support. Pablo's father nodded thoughtfully. I would be honored to help in any way I can. And Carolina, I promise you, any advice I give will be in service of your vision, not my own agenda. As they were leaving that night, Alina stopped at the door and turned back to Taos. There's one more thing. I know this might be presumptuous, but what is it, Mom? Pablo asked. And I noticed that he used the word Mom with warmth for the first time since they'd arrived. I know you two had to have your wedding under difficult circumstances. I know it wasn't the celebration you had originally planned. She looked nervous, almost shy. We were wondering, would you consider having another ceremony, a real wedding celebration with all your friends and family, the way it should have been? Pablo and I looked at each other. Elena, we're already married. We don't need another wedding. I know you don't need it, Robert said, but you deserve it. You deserve to celebrate your love properly, surrounded by people who truly support you. And we deserve the chance to watch our son marry the most remarkable woman he's ever met. Elena reached for my hands. Carolina, would you let us help plan the wedding you should have had? Would you let us prove that we can support your happiness instead of trying to control it? I felt my heart swell with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Are you asking if you can help plan our dream wedding? We're asking if you'll let us earn the right to be called Pablo's parents again, Robert said quietly. And maybe someday, if we're very lucky, Carolina's family. Months later, on a perfect Saturday afternoon in May, Pablo and I had the wedding we had always dreamed of. The planning process had been incredible. Elena and Robert had thrown themselves into creating the perfect celebration with the same energy and attention to detail they had once devoted to social climbing and business networking. But this time, every decision was made with love and genuine care for our happiness. We chose a beautiful outdoor venue overlooking the Mississippi River with gardens full of flowers and trees draped in fairy lights. Elena had researched vendors for weeks, not to find the most expensive options, but to find the ones who would create the most meaningful experience. My dress was even more beautiful than the first one, elegant and sophisticated, but with personal touches that made it uniquely mine. Elena had insisted on paying for it, not as a way of showing off Wells, but as a way of expressing her love and support. Pablo wore a classic tuxedo that he had chosen himself, and he looked more handsome than I had ever seen him before. Robert had taken him shopping, and they had spent the entire day talking about marriage, partnership, and what it means to be a good husband. But the most beautiful thing about our second wedding wasn't the location or the decorations or even our clothes. It was the people who were there to celebrate with us. My family, of course, looking proud and happy and grateful to see me living my dreams. But now they were sitting alongside Pablo's extended family, cousins and aunts and uncles who had reached out after hearing about the changes in Elena and Robert. People who wanted to be part of our lives and support our happiness. Pablo's colleagues from the automotive restoration world were there, many of whom had become close friends. The employees from our various businesses filled several tables. People whose lives had been changed by the opportunities we had created. Maria was there, radiant with success and confidence, accompanied by her girlfriend Sarah, the woman her family had never known about, the woman she was now free to love openly, thanks to the independence her new career had given her. And there in the front row sat Dr. Elena Martinez and her husband Robert. No longer the controlling, manipulative people who had tried to destroy our relationship, but two people who had found the courage to transform themselves and their marriage. The ceremony itself was everything our first wedding hadn't been. Peaceful, joyful, and surrounded by genuine love and support. When Pablo and I exchanged vows this time, we spoke about partnership, respect, and the courage to choose love over convention. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife again, the cheers were loud and heartfelt. And when Pablo kissed me, it tasted like victory and promise and the beginning of our real happily ever after. But the most meaningful moment came during the reception when Elena and Robert stood up together to give a toast. We want to say, "Something to all of you," Elena began, her voice strong and clear. 6 months ago, we made some terrible mistakes. We tried to break up two people who were meant to be together because we were threatened by their happiness and success. She looked directly at Pablo and me. We tried to destroy Carolina's relationship with our son because we were jealous of her strength and courage. We were jealous that she had the bravery to build her own life. While we had spent 30 years living according to other people's expectations, Robert stepped forward. We were so focused on maintaining our social status and business connections that we forgot the most important things in life: love, family, and the satisfaction that comes from helping others succeed. The room was completely quiet. But Carolina and Pablo taught us something important. They taught us that it's never too late to choose courage over comfort. It's never too late to choose authenticity over acceptance. It's never too late to become the people you were meant to be. Robert raised his glass. So here's to Carolina and Pablo, two people who showed us that love is not about control or manipulation or social arrangements. Love is about choosing to build something beautiful together. Even when the world tries to tear you down, Elena smiled through her tears. And here's to second chances for marriages, for dreams, and for families who are brave enough to choose love over everything else. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it because I was too busy crying happy tears and marveling at the transformation of these two people, who'd become genuine family to us after dinner and dancing and more celebration than I thought possible. Pablo and I finally had a moment alone together on the garden terrace overlooking the river. "So, Mrs. Richardson," Pablo said, pulling me close, "how does it feel to have the wedding of your dreams?" "Perfect," I said. "But you know what the best part is?" "What?" "The best part is seeing your parents discover who they really are, watching them fall in love with each other all over again, but this time as equals and partners instead of controller and controlled." Pablo spun me around in the moonlight. "Did you see my father dancing with my mother earlier? Really dancing, not just going through the motions for social appearances. I don't think I've ever seen him look that happy. And did you see Elena talking with Dr. Williams about the pediatric clinics she's planning to open? She was glowing with excitement about getting back into medicine. Speaking of exciting news, I have an update about the business." "What kind of update?" "Heritage Automotive Holdings just landed the biggest contract in the company's history. A partnership with 3 European luxury car manufacturers that will create over 5,000 new jobs across 8 states. He stared at him. 5,000 jobs? 5,000 jobs for people who deserve good opportunities. 5,000 families who will have better lives because of your vision and determination. I felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what we had accomplished. "Pablo, do you realize what this means? It means we're about to become one of the most successful business partnerships in the country. It means we're about to provide opportunities for thousands of people who might not have had them otherwise. It means," Pablo said, kissing me softly, "that you have become exactly the person you were always meant to be." As we danced under the stars to music drifting from the reception, I reflected on the incredible journey that had brought us to this moment. I had started as a poor girl from North Memphis with big dreams and an unshakable determination to build something better for myself and my family. I had faced rejection, humiliation, and attempts to destroy everything I had worked for. I had been tested in ways I never could have imagined. But I had never given up. I had never compromised my values. I had never stopped believing that hard work and integrity would eventually triumph over money and manipulation. And now here I was, a successful businesswoman, a loving wife, and someone who had created thousands of opportunities for others. But more than that, I had become someone who had inspired others to transform their own lives. Elena had found the strength to reclaim her dreams and rebuild her marriage on a foundation of equality and mutual respect. Robert had learned to be a partner instead of a controller. Even Maria had discovered that she could build her own success and love whom she chose. "Carolina," Pablo whispered as we swayed to the music, drifting from their reception. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, because the hard parts showed us who we really were. They showed us what we were capable of. They showed us that our love was strong enough to overcome anything." Pablo smiled. "And what do you think comes next?" I looked out at the river flowing endlessly toward the horizon, carrying possibilities and dreams and the promise of tomorrow. "Next, we keep building. We keep creating opportunities for others. We keep showing the world that success isn't about where you come from. It's about where you're determined to go and personally what comes next for us." I smiled and kissed my husband under the stars. "Next, we live happily ever after, the way we always knew we would." Over the next year, the changes in our family continued to amaze and inspire me. Elena completed her medical refresher program with honors and opened her pediatric clinic in one of Memphis's most underserved neighborhoods. Her clinic provides medical care to children whose families can't afford traditional health care. and she has already treated over 2,000 young patients. But more than that, she has become a fierce advocate for healthy care access and children's rights. She testifies before state legislative committees, writes articles for medical journals, and mentors young doctors who want to work in underserved communities. The woman who once spent their time planning charity galas and social events now spends her days saving lives and fighting for systemic change. Robert has also made changes in his business practices. He's divested from several companies that exploit workers or damage communities. And he's invested in businesses that prioritize social responsibility alongside profit. I used to think that the only measure of success was how much money you could accumulate. Now I understand that real success is about how much good you can do with whatever resources you have. Had told Pablo and me over dinner one evening. As for Pablo and me, our businesses have continued to grow beyond anything we ever imagined. Heritage Automotive Holdings now operates in 15 states and employs over 8,000 people. Classic Dreams Automotive has become the premier restoration company in the South with clients from around the world. But their numbers aren't what matter most to me. What matters is the single mother from Alabama who got her first good job at one of our facilities and was able to move her children out of poverty. What matters is the young man from rural Mississippi who started as a janitor at one of our shops and worked his way up to become a master restoration specialist who now trains other employees. What matters is the immigrant family from Guatemala who found stable employment and health insurance through our companies and were able to buy their first home and send their daughter to college. What matters is the former gang member from Detroit who found purpose and community in our apprenticeship program and is now a successful business owner himself. These are the victories that make everything we went through worthwhile. Pablo and I have also started a foundation that provides scholarships and business development, support to young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Every year we help dozens of people start their own businesses, create their own success stories, and become the next generation of leaders who understand that true success means lifting others up. One of our scholarship recipients, a young woman named Destiny from East Memphis, recently opened her own catering company that employs formerly incarcerated individuals. Another recipient, a young man named Marcus from rural Mississippi, started a construction company that specializes in building affordable housing. These young entrepreneurs remind me every day of why the work we do matters. They remind me that success is not just about personal achievement, it's about creating a legacy of opportunity and empowerment that extends far beyond your own life. But perhaps the most meaningful development has been the relationship that has grown between Elena, Robert, and me. They have truly become the family I never expected to have. Elena and I talk several times a week, sharing stories about our work, our challenges, and our dreams for the future. She has become not just a mother-in-law, but a mentor, a friend, and someone I genuinely admire and respect. Robert has become a father figure I never had. Someone who believes in my abilities and supports my vision without trying to control or direct it. He asks thoughtful questions, offers valuable advice, and celebrates our successes as if they were his own. And the relationship between Pablo and his parents has been completely transformed. They talk openly now about their feelings, their mistakes, and their hopes for the future. They spend time together because they enjoy each other's company, not out of obligation or social expectation. Pablo recently told me that he feels like he has his parents back for the first time since he was a child. Before, they were like business associates who happened to live in the same house, he said. Now they're actually my family, as I sit here today. 3 years after that first disastrous meeting with Pavo's parents, I'm amazed by how much can change when people are willing to choose growth over comfort, authenticity over image, and love over control. but I'm also reminded of the lessons I learned during the most challenging and transformative period of my life. First, never let anyone make you feel small because of where you come from. Your background is not your destiny. Your determination is. I came from North Memphis with nothing but dreams and work ethic, and I built a business empire that creates opportunities for thousands of people. Second, success without integrity is meaningless. Build your achievements on a foundation of honesty, respect, and genuine care for others. The businesses that last, the relationships that matter, and the legacies that endure are all built on character, not just profit. Third, real love doesn't ask you to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. The right person will celebrate your strength, not try to control it. Pablo learned to love me not despite my ambition and independence, but because of it. Fourth, sometimes the people who hurt us the most are just people who are hurting themselves. Elena and Robert weren't evil people. They were people who had lost themselves in pursuit of status and control. When they found the courage to change, they became some of my strongest supporters. Fifth, your greatest revenge against people who try to tear you down is not just your own success, but success that lifts others up as well. The Heritage Automotive Holdings project didn't just make Pablo and I wealthy. It created thousands of jobs and opportunities for people who needed them. Sixth, it's never too late to choose courage over comfort, authenticity over acceptance, and love over control. Elena was 55 when she went back to medical school. Robert was 60 when he decided to completely change his approach to business and relationships. Age is not an excuse for staying stuck in patterns that don't serve you. And finally, real power comes from empowering others. Real strength comes from building others up. Real success comes from creating value that extends beyond your own life. The most successful people I know are the ones who understand that individual achievement is meaningless unless it contributes to collective progress. 6 months ago, Pablo and I were invited to speak at a conference for young entrepreneurs. As I stood on that stage looking out at hundreds of young people who were hungry for success and opportunity, I thought about my 17-year-old. Self-selling snacks in a high school cafeteria, I thought about how impossible it would have seemed then that I would one day be dressing a room full of business leaders sharing lessons about building companies that change lives. But more than that, I thought about the responsibility that comes with success. Every young person in that audience was someone's son or daughter, someone with dreams and potential and the capacity to make a positive impact on the world. My job wasn't just to inspire them, but to create pathways for them to succeed. We're planning to expand Heritage Automotive Holdings internationally, creating jobs and opportunities in countries where economic development is desperately needed. We're developing new programs to help people start their own businesses, build their own wealth, and create their own success stories. And personally, Pablo and I are talking about starting a family. The idea of raising children who understand that success comes with responsibility. That privilege should be used to lift others up. That love is the foundation of everything worthwhile. That's the most exciting adventure I can imagine. But whatever the future holds, I know that Pablo and I will face it together, supported by a family that has learned to choose love over control, and surrounded by a community that has been built on the foundation of mutual support and shared success. So, I want to ask you something. Beautiful listeners, what would you have done if you were in my situation? Would you have given Pablo another chance after everything his family put us through? Would you have been able to forgive Elena and Robert when they showed genuine change? Or would you have held on to the hurt they caused? More importantly, what dreams are you putting aside because of other people's expectations? What authentic version of yourself are you hiding because you're afraid of judgments or rejection? What opportunities are you not pursuing? Because someone told you that people like you don't get opportunities like that. Remember, you have more power than you realize. You have more strength than you know, and you have the ability to create not just your own success, but opportunities for others as well. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not worthy of your dreams. Don't let anyone make you believe that love requires you to make yourself smaller. Don't let anyone tell you that success is only for people who come from certain backgrounds or have certain advantages. The most successful people I know are the ones who refuse to accept other people's limitations as their own reality, and remember that sometimes the greatest gift you can give the world is the courage to become exactly who you were meant to be, to pursue the dreams that seem impossible, and to use whatever success you achieve to create opportunities for others. Elena taught me that it's never too late to reclaim your dreams. No matter how many years you've spent living according to other people's expectations. Robert taught me that even the most controlling people can learn to be supportive partners when they choose growth over ego. And Pablo taught me that the right person will not just accept your ambition, they will fuel it, support it, and help you achieve things you never thought possible. But most importantly, this journey taught me that success is not a destination. It's a responsibility. Every achievement opens doors not just for yourself, but for others who are still fighting to prove their worth. Every time someone doubts you because of your background, you have a choice. You can let their doubts become your limitations, or you can use their doubts as fuel to exceed even your own expectations. I chose fuel, and that made all the difference. Today, as I look at the empire Pablo and I have built together, not just in terms of money, but in terms of lives changed, opportunities created, and barriers broken, I know that every insult, every rejection, every attempt to make me feel small was worth it. Because those challenges didn't break me. They forged me into someone strong enough to lift others up. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter that reminded me why this work matters so much. It was from Shayla, a young woman from North Memphis, the same neighborhood where I grew up. She had heard my story and wanted to tell me hers. Shayla wrote that she was 17 years old, living with her grandmother because her mother was struggling with addiction and working 2 jobs to help support her younger brothers. She was brilliant, maintaining a 4.0 GPA despite all her responsibilities. But she had given up on her dreams of going to college because she couldn't afford it and couldn't imagine leaving her family. "But then I heard about you," she wrote. "I heard about a girl from North Memphis who refused to let her circumstances define her limits. I heard about someone who built businesses that help people like me. And I realized that maybe my dreams aren't impossible after all." Shayla applied for one of our scholarships, and not only did she receive full funding for college, but we also hired her grandmother as a part-time employee at one of our facilities, so the family would have stable income while Shayla pursued her education. Last month, Shayla started her freshman year at the University of Memphis, majoring in business with a minor in social work. She wants to start organizations that help at-risk youth build better futures for themselves. Reading her letter, I saw myself at 17 full of dreams, but convinced they were impossible for someone like me. The difference is that Shayla doesn't have to build her path alone. She has a community of people who believe in her potential and are willing to invest in her success. That's what real wealth looks like. Not just having enough money to buy whatever you want, but having enough influence to create opportunities for people who need them. 2 years ago, Elena surprised me by asking if she could nominate me for the Tennessee Humanitarian Award, given annually to someone who has made significant contributions to improving life in underserved communities. Carolina, She said, "I want the whole state to know the kind of person our family is proud to call daughter." When I won that award, the ceremony was attended by over 1,000 people, business leaders, community activists, government officials, and dozens of employees and scholarship recipients from our programs. But the person I was most proud to have in the audience was my mother. Mama, now retired and living in a beautiful house that Pablo and I bought for her, sat in the front row wearing the biggest smile I had ever seen. After the ceremony, she hugged me and whispered, "Your daddy will be so proud of the woman you've become." In my acceptance speech that night, I talked about the importance of remembering where you come from, not as a limitation, but as motivation to ensure that others have the same opportunities to rise. Success without service is just accumulation, but success with service becomes transformation, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. After the ceremony, a young man approached me, probably around 19 or 20 years old. He was well-dressed and confident, but there was something in his eyes that reminded me of my younger self, Mrs. Richardson. He said, "My name is Damon, and I just wanted to thank you." Thank me for what? For proving that people like us can make it. I'm from East Nashville, and I've been working on a business plan for a technology company that would help connect underserved communities with educational resources. Everyone keeps telling me that I don't have the right background, the right connections, the right support system. He paused and smiled. But then I look at what you've accomplished, and I realize that maybe the right background is just the determination to create something meaningful, because that's what real success looks like, and you have everything it takes to achieve it. If this story touched your heart, if it inspired you to dream bigger or love deeper or fight harder for what you believe in, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that their dreams are valid, their struggles are temporary, and their success is possible. Leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done in Carolina's situation? Would you have given Pablo's family a second chance when they showed genuine change? How would you have handled the challenges she faced? But more importantly, tell me about your own dreams. What are you building? What obstacles are you overcoming? What impact do you want to make? Because your story matters too. Your dreams are valid, and your success is going to inspire someone else to believe that theirs is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for believing that a girl from North Memphis could build an empire and find true love along the way. But remember, this isn't the end of mystery. It's just the beginning. Because when you choose to build something meaningful, when you choose to lift others up, when you choose love over everything else, you don't just change your life, you change the world. And the world needs changing. So get out there and start building. The world is waiting to see what you're capable of. We have 70+ videos on this channel, so it's a good thing if you check out other videos here too. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and like this video. We'll see you in the next story. Bye.